Is anything blocking on your screen? Okay, so I'm assuming you can see all of the screen. I want to welcome everyone for the seminar, Assessing ELL Language Needs, 5 detailed tips to analyze ELLs for your content classroom. And if I can ask people to mute themselves so we don't get a lot of background, that would be great. All right, this is a third of a series that I'm doing. We had transitioning ELLs partnering with their parents. Now we're on assessment. Next week is differentiating ELLs for content, then co-planning, and then sustaining PLCs for your ELLs. It's kind of back to back and also timed for when the needs come up. Okay, and please fill out the Google form. Most of you have that already. And once you submit everything, you'll get the slide deck with all the resources and links. I want to thank NYSESLAT for giving me the platform to do this and also to help you. If you're not a member yet, consider doing so for $20.20 to be a member and getting CTLE credits if you need those. If you don't know me, I'm Mr. Lim, Frederick Lim, ELL teacher for the longest time at a middle school in Harlem, New York. I try to do a lot of PBLs for students so that they would get a lot of background knowledge for their science classes especially. I do a lot of co-planning and coaching, adapting ELL strategies in content areas. I like doing workshops. I'm glad I did this one in Hanoi last summer with a group of teachers teaching STEM, incorporating English into their curriculum. Also a member of the NYSESLAT bilingual group. I did a project in Mexico with this group in Mexico City. And now I try to help teachers like you get better use of their time in terms of planning resources and assessing ELLs. This is work I did last year with NYC Men Teach. All right, so that's me in a nutshell. Let's take a poll. How would you answer this question? Where do you start teaching ELLs? You can rank yourself. It's in the packet I sent you in the Google form. I know where to begin and regularly co-plan and co-teach. So that would be like the #1 thing. Or are you, I know where to begin with teachers' plans, but I plan by myself. Or I somewhat know where to begin, but I need more guidance. Or are you the person, I don't know where to begin, so I'm open to suggestion. So take a moment to rank. And let's move on. Okay, so basically the 5 tips are: 1, ask better interview questions, then analyze your NYSESLAT trajectory. This applies to NYC teachers only. However, the teachers that are here who don't teach within the New York City area will still benefit from the information. The 3rd is analyzing the rate of language acquisition. And the 4th tip is use other data points at your school. And the 5th is prepare language targets and objectives. Hold on, one person came in and I have to get out and let them in. All right, so our goals basically are to reflect on these 5 tips to assess language. What can I ask parents of ELLs and ELLs themselves in the interview process to inform instruction? Number 2, how can I determine an ELL's trajectory? And how can I analyze rate of language acquisition? And 4th, what data points can I gather besides number 2 and 3 and 1? And how can I prepare to use language targets? And that sets the tone for the next webinar next week. So let's go through these. Another poll. What is your skill level in assessing ELLs? 1 would be, I'm new to this. Number 3 would be, I want to learn more. And 5 would be like a pro. And 2 and 4 would be in the middle. As you think about that in your Google form, I'm going to admit these 2 people. Okay. And so please answer and rank yourselves. You won't let me submit your phone because... Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about the formation of the of some of the questions there, Sabine. I'll have to take a look at that, but you can just skip that for right now. So how do you rank yourself on interviewing parents, analyzing the RLAT, and formulating language targets? Okay, so let's dive into the first one, asking better questions. So basically you're talking to the parents of ELLs and to the ELLs. What you need for this is the home language survey, which most of you have in your schools, contact information for that person, whether email or phone, and a translating app. Parents can give you a lot of information about your ELL. For example, if they had interrupted education, how was their engagement in schools previous? Were they really into their school? Do they need a lot of coaxing? What's their personality like? Report cards are really helpful that they can produce. If you are on the ATS system in New York City, you can get a history report if they have been studying in the United States or in New York specifically, at least in the last year. The home life is really important as well. You can ask parents about their habits like reading at home, but also the level of time that they have, because I found that some parents work, and so their children have to take care of other siblings, or they have to do chores at home. It doesn't leave a lot of time for homework. And if your school is requiring a lot of homework, you'll see that it probably won't get done. You can also ask them if they have a steady place and time, like a desk, a lamp, and a chair, which a lot of people don't have, but at least maybe they have a kitchen table. If they do have that situation, ask if there's like a quiet time when everyone in the house remains quiet so people can do their homework. Something like that, just to get a rounder picture, a holistic picture of where the child is in relation to their outside being. You see them in school, but then they could be different at home. And you want to find that out in order to support them as much as you can at the school. Okay, so ask a lot of questions from parents to get more background information. In terms of a translating app, I reviewed this last week. Talking Points is what I'm using this year, but there's also Remind that some people use and recommend. There's also Class Dojo. Class Dojo might be better for primary kids. Yep, I see Kelly chimed in. She uses Remind. The interface of Remind reminds me of more like a high school level. So that's why Talking Points is what I'm using. Okay, so, oh yeah, one thing about this translating app, it does translate, so you need to set it up that way. And they need to download the parent app, whereas you as a teacher download the teaching app. Okay, once you get past the parents, interview the ELLs and interview what learning is like from their perspective. You can ask very simple questions like, how are you? Listening and speaking type of interaction. You can tell by their answers how complex their level of English is. If they just say fine, well, they're probably very beginning, but I'm fine, thanks, maybe transitioning, right? You can't spend a lot of time asking them like a barrage of questions, but I do try to make it fun for them also. I try to get a sense of who they are as a person. I teach middle school, so at that age, they're forming ideas of what they want to be. So one question is, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? So I got a lot of like doctors, okay, and I get a lot of like soccer players or basketball players. So all of that can inform how you approach learning for them. If they like cooking, you can introduce things regarding plants and vegetables. When you talk about sixth grade science unit on atoms and molecules, put that in relation to food. This is what they like. Okay, so more about that later. Let's do a reflection on this tip number 1 on interviewing parents and ELLs. What can you ask to inform your instruction? Answer that on your Google form, and I'll give you about 35 seconds. Just think, what can you ask ELLs to inform your instruction? More interesting questions. Okay, about 8 more seconds. Great, thanks for those answers. Let's look at number 2, analyzing the NYSESLAT trajectory. So as you know, the NYSESLAT wasn't taken in, well, in May, but a report still comes out. It's called the RLAT for New York City. RLAT is short for Lab R NYSESLAT Exam History Report. If you have access to this at your school, just ask for the RLAT from your main office. And if you don't know how to analyze that, maybe this little video can help you that I created. It's very short. Steps to analyzing the RLAT are these. First is obtain the digital RLAT and configure it so that the columns are neater. I'll show you that in the video. Number 2 is copy and consolidate the columns. And then number 3, note when they started the program, and also note the long-term ELLs, and finally tag the stagnant trajectory looking at the modalities. If that all sounds like a different language, I'm going to explain each point. This is what the RLAT looks like when you get it digitally. Sometimes, well, for the longest time, I've had these printed out for me by the ops people, and I thought I was like brilliant in transferring everything on my own spreadsheet. I later found out that you can get them already on a spreadsheet, so why not do that? Okay, so let's take a look at the RLAT here. Let's see. I need to share my sound. It's a very short video. What do some teachers forget to do before planning lessons for ELLs? Have you heard of the RLAT? It's a report packed with information about your ELLs that sets the foundation for differentiated lesson planning and co-planning. Analyzing the RLAT is important if you want to embed language targets in your learning targets in the subjects you teach. The first step is to get the Excel version of the RLAT from ATS. Your school administrator in the main office has access to the New York ATS, which is an acronym that means Automate the Schools, which was set up in 1988. Request that this report be emailed to you. Okay, so that's just to get you into the report itself. The next one shows you how to consolidate the columns.
Step 2 is when you set up the page to begin analyzing. Open the file in Excel, create a copy, and save the original, since you might need to refer back to it later. Eliminate the columns that are not necessary. In this example, I left the first name, the level or the year the person's going into this current year, but this class column I can eliminate. Same with the Xcode. The next 3 columns are important. I color code them just for clarity. I also bold the top to make it easier to read. The LBR means the lab R. It's the column that shows the year that the L was given the initial test to begin the ESL or ENL program. The NYTL means the NYSETL, which replaced the lab R. This is the year that they were given. The DEC means decision. This is the decision or the level that the student received after taking the lab R or the NYSETL. The RS is the raw score. This is the raw score that the student got when they received the NYSETL or the lab R.
Okay, so after you get all that set up, it's really good to tag the long-term L's and the stagnant trajectory. Okay. So this is how you group them in grade levels.
In step 3, I begin to group by grade level. This is how you do this.
Yeah, I recorded
If
these
data
in
has a header
case
row,
some of
as
you
it
don't know
does,
how to configure
and
Excel.
list by
Uh,
level.
it's really important that you get the columns
You can see
grouped
here that all the 6th graders
so that you can read this a lot easier.
are here. Give them a color.
So here I'm just grouping the 6th graders
All the
and then
7th
grouping the
graders are
7th
here.
graders. The thing about this report, it comes out alphabetically.
Give them a color.
So you have students from 6th grade mixed with the 7th
And
grade.
8th graders are here.
It just makes it easier when you regroup
Their
them.
color can be white.
Okay, so that's how you group them. And then I add even more color because that's how I see things in the world. Tagging long-term L's. Now, I explained it in the video, but I'll explain it to you here. Long-term L's are problematic. They're a subgroup of L's that have stayed in the system for more than 6 years. They're already in their 6th year and they're going to their 7th year of the program, which actually takes about 4 years or maybe 3 years to finish. So statistically, they've done some studies on long-term L's. Once they get up to high school, if they are still a long-term L, they have this higher tendency to drop out. So that's not good for anybody, right? So it's good to hone in on who the long-term L's are and get them passed as soon as possible. Let's take a look at the analysis here. I grouped the NYSESLAT scores into the years that they were taken. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns per test. So this was in 2019. You have the decision, the final decision, what rank they are, and then on the NYSESLAT, and then the total score that they got, and then the breakdown of the modalities, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You can compare these scores over the years. This is 2018 and 2017. And you can see how well they've done. David, for example, here, he doesn't have any scores for 2017 or 18, just 2019. He just came into the country or into New York State, and he took the NYSESLAT for the first time. he got entering with a raw score of 9 based on listening score of 6, speaking score of 0, reading score of 3, and writing score of 0. Okay. Jose, on the other hand, he doesn't have a Lab R year, so they just put him in the program and had him take the NYSESLAT. That's what you can read from this. In 2017, he got an emerging score, and then the next year he jumped up to transitioning with a score of 43. But then a year later, he only jumped up 1 point. So I don't think he was feeling good that year, or he had a bad testing day. I tagged him as red because he should be progressing, right? So as a 6th grader, something happened in the 5th grade and in the 4th grade. Andrew, on the other hand, he took the NYSETEL in 2016. He got a transitioning level, but then the next year, 2017, he was the same level. And then 2018, he was the same level. And then 2019, he was the same level. So something is happening in his teaching or his cognitive abilities that he can't advance. So he's one of the students that's very high near my radar. Let's take a look at Jose. Here he came in as a, well, over here, he came in as a beginner, 2014. B means beginner in the Lab R. Then he took the NYSESLAT in 2014, 15, 16, and then 17, he's still emerging. But then all of a sudden he got smart. He jumped like how many levels? Like 2 levels and got to EX. And then he stayed the same here. Maybe that was a long jump from 2017 to 2018. So he wanted to take a rest maybe. I put him down as a pink because compared to a red, he's okay, right? So he's still on my radar, but not as near as Andrew is, for example. Okay, so that's how you read the trajectory of the NYSESLAT. Let's reflect on this. What is not a reason to analyze the NYSESLAT score trajectory? Take a look at those. Is it to establish initial baseline level of English? Is it to follow the trajectory of ELLs language acquisition? Is it not to tag any long-term ELLs who need to pass the NYSESLAT? Or is the reason not to know what their favorite subject is? Kind of an easy question, right? Yeah, the answer is D. That's not the reason why you do this. You want to know where they are base level. You want to know how they're flowing from year 1 to the next, and then you're tagging the long-term ELLs. Okay. Number 3, analyzing the rate of language acquisition. We did a little of that looking at the NYSESLAT, but analyzing the modalities really uncovers more information. What you need to do is track the NYSESLAT trajectory, which I already gave you, so this video you can watch later. But then tracking the modalities gets more interesting. Let's see if that works for us. In the middle here, I'm going to speed it up a little bit, and you can watch it later. But the first part,
as part of step 4, you're going to group the years that the
interesting.
NYSESLATs were taken over the past 3 years. Here I color-coded them a different color so that we can see them clearly. You want to focus on the decision first. For 2019, the decisions are bolded, same with 2018, same with 2017.
So this is how you
see
bold
that this
the
person
tests.
Here, it's all blank. That means the first NYSESLAT this person ever took was in 2019.
Okay, so we did all that. And I get to the part where I color code them different colors for different reasons.
Didn't take the test 2 years in a row. That's certainly a red flag because they're back into the program.
Okay, so there's a gap here. I wanted to point this out. This student on the most recent RLAT is back as an L. So it's kind of strange to me. I have to go and investigate. He took the test in 2017, right? And got entering, but then for 2 years, he skipped out. Maybe he went out of the country and then came back and wanted to resume school again. That could happen. But there's a gap of learning here that needs to be, it needs to be shored up in a short amount of time, because he came back as a 7th grader expecting to do 7th grade things at an English level that maybe is like 4th grade, right? So it helps to analyze these. I haven't met this person yet. They're all brand new. We're just starting this week. This is our 2nd day. But he's going to be an interesting person to teach.
Transitioning, transitioning. Transitioning, transition. That's clear flatlining.
Yeah, I look at the kids that are flatlining, meaning that they're in the same
And
level for 3 years or so. It's just interesting
this
how
one is
their journeys are.
okay. So you can see that you have a clearer landscape of your students that you need to focus on and which are on a good trajectory. This caseload here doesn't look nearly as bad as just looking at this list of L's, right? In the next video, I'll show you how to dig deeper into this report by analyzing the 4 modalities, which are here. That's when the data becomes even more interesting, so you'll want to watch that also.
Okay, so yeah, I just alluded to the next webinar, focusing more on the modalities, but you got a hint of what they are. Just a few more examples of how I tag these and looking at the numbers as they grow from right to left. You read it from right to left and see how they're progressing. You can see that the listening score of 13 jumps to 17, jumps to 21. So this person is on the right trajectory, starting with emerging, then going to transitioning, then going to expanding. Okay, so tip number 3, reflection. Why can analyzing modalities uncover more information? What do you feel you need to do this? Yeah, maybe 15 more seconds. I'm going to quickly check the chat information. Yeah, the RLAT. What is RLAT? That's a report you get on ATS if you teach in the New York City area. I will share the presentation once I receive your form. Yeah, you can see the students' strengths. Very good. Okay, so let's continue. So the fourth hint here is use other data points available at your school. There are many sources. The state exam scores, the HIST will show you scores of students who've taken exams at other schools in New York. There's one little loophole. It's not a little if you're an L. You can pass the NYSESLAT indirectly by scoring a 3 on the ELA exam. 10 years doing this at the same school, I've noticed only one student do that. He was so proud, I was so proud. So keep that in mind. They can pass the NYSESLAT and get out of the program if they get a 3 or better on the state exam ELA. If your school does the NWEA MAP assessments, you can look at those, looking at the RIT scores. It's a very broad test. I wouldn't rely on it completely, of course, because it doesn't break down the modalities for you, but it gives you an idea of the capabilities of the student and how they're thinking in other areas. FNP running record. Earlier in my career at the same school, the literacy coach really loved the FNP, and so we did that in ELA, and it was a really good exercise. But then they changed admin, and some people didn't like it, so they discontinue it. But with the material still there at the school, I used the reading program for the ELLs, which they really like. As they grow the different levels up the FNP continuum, I can have a richer conversation with them because I can say, look, you're at this level book. Let's say it was like a X book, right? X level. Your goal is going to be a Y level. So we have a conversation where you have actual numbers that they can have goals around. And a lot of them have great success at going up the levels of reading. Another is Achieve 3000. This is what we use at our school. It's become a program, it's like a class. Now it's integrated into our ELA program. Let's see, there was a comment about that. Do you like Achieve 3000? It seems to rank my students much too low. That may be. What I found though is that if you have a conversation with a student to increase their Lexile level, they have certain goals. So if their Lexile level was 600 and they're at 400, you can have a better conversation with them saying, well, I need this score to go up, basically. So it's kind of relative, even though they rank them low. Any progress for the next reading, like every quarter, it should show a higher number. So that growth is what you want to emphasize, not really their level. The Lexile levels, for me, they don't really mean anything. It's more about the growth. Can you go from 600 to 800, for example? So whether I like it or not, I like that they created this program and it's engaging for students. It gives them some structure in learning new vocabulary and answering comprehensive questions, especially when they're reading informational texts. Okay, so reflect on that. What data in your school can you use to inform ELL support? You're welcome, Diana. So think about the scores and the tests and the exams that you can possibly pull from and just jot them down. Another 10 seconds. Great. All right, so tip number 5, prepare language targets and objectives. This is a topic for next time, but I want to hint about it because it just flows naturally into what we're doing right now. Because you have the data, what are you going to do about it? Okay, I have to admit someone. So you have the data, what are you going to do about it? If you just came in and you want to see the chat, click on that for the form. I like this quote. After adolescent ELLs acquire the basis, they need to become active readers and writers who use reading and writing. These processes let them examine a text, make conclusions, articulate and incorporate those conclusions verbally. Okay, so they're actually comprehending once they have some text in their hand, they think about it, and then they verbalize their own thoughts. This is a skill we want our ELLs to develop, not just rote memorization. I mean, if you're still giving them lists to memorize, that's a pedagogy that's been proven not to be as effective as learning words directly and explicitly explained to you and then using them, not just memorizing words. Memorizing words can be like in addition to your explicit explanation, but they shouldn't be the only thing that you do to increase the vocabulary of your ELLs. Okay, get them to read and talk about what they're reading. So in terms of preparing language targets or objectives, I'm going to give you tools. So what you need are the assessments, like where they are, and a couple of language grids that I found that you can get them off the internet, but it depends on how you use them. Okay, so this is a good one that I've found from Dr. Collier. It's a language acquisition continuum. If you have, for example, a transitioning student, you can look at the transitioning column. I boxed the point there in reading. They can make connections, retell stories using simple sentences, using picture cues and initial letter sounds to predict a text, follow simple written directions. You would include those goals if they were like an emerging and early transitioning. You want to get them to this point of being able to retell stories using simple sentences, right? When they're entering, you don't want to put that language demand on them because they're capable of relying on pictures for understanding, retelling using gestures, you know, like rain, all that. So try to find a way to teach them the same content, but in the language production mode that they're capable of. And make sure that the mode is one step ahead of where they are. So again, if they're an emerging student, try to get them more toward the transitioning by using transitioning goals. The little arrow on the right-hand side shows some of the things that you can use for country-specific. Knowing the background culture of your students can really help their language acquisition when you frame things in terms of things that they know in their culture. If you have Muslim students, for example, you can bring in Quran information, you can bring in countries where they're from. Our students come from Yemen, so we talk about how life is in Yemen, what kind of foods they like. Same with the DR, like mangu and different foods and dances. Same with Ecuador and their holidays. So all of those things can be included in your lessons, trying to drive the point to learn the curriculum, but also produce in this language acquisition continuum. You can tell from this grid here that the early production and speech emergent, you can just translate that into the terminology that we use, like emerging and transitioning, and look at the capabilities at that level, like good comprehension of general meaning and increased comprehension of specific meaning, versus increased comprehension of general and some specific meaning. Okay, I think you got that. Once you get this link, you'll find it really an interesting read, for one, but very useful. The grids are very useful in setting up goals. Another resource I found, Kinsella and Singer, they use a type of formula to scaffold the linguistic demands. Here's an example for writing language objectives. You have the objective, which is linked to standards. Use active verbs to explain using the depth of knowledge chart that you guys are familiar with, and also the Bloom's taxonomy verbs. You're using target language necessary to complete the task, and emphasizing development of expressive language skills, meaning productive language skills like speaking and writing, where students actually produce after they thought about something. The simple language objective example could be like students will articulate the main idea and details using target vocabulary. So you see the bold words there. One is the standard, or the, standard with the production. Okay, so the main idea and then produce it. They kind of go together. This is an initiative that I've wanted to do in my school for like 2 or 3 years, but it's this year that the admin said, oh, it would be great to include language objectives. So now's the time for me to step up at my school to show this to content teachers, so they can fortify their training when they're in their classrooms and be aware of the language demands and language objectives they have for the ELLs. I'm going to delve more deeply into this into the next webinar. Reflection, tip number 5. How would you encourage systematic use of language targets at your school? I've been trying to do it for like 3 years, like I said. Finally, this is the year. So what about you? Where are you? Look on your form and answer. Our school systematically uses these, or B, some of our teachers use language targets. C, teachers use them without admin really systemizing it, right? Or D, you want to know more about it? We're making really good time, so I appreciate you being here. 5 more seconds. Okay, Diana, see you. All right, so the overall reflection basically is, would you be interested in any more details like tutorial format or asynchronous lessons? And which topics would you like to learn about? If you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat, you can put them in the form, you can email me. But basically, that's it. Those are the 5 detailed tips. This is the form, and the next is differentiation for ELLs series in the web series, installment number 4. Don't forget to register for the conference for NYSESLAT in November. Yeah, the links will be provided in the resources, Nicole. So I put them here. You can see that they're there. Great. That's where my contact information is, method.courses@gmail.com.